So, before we begin today, I would like to tell you, all of you, a secret. And that secret is that, and hold on to this, okay? Because it will be relevant later. In my bedroom, opposite on my bed, there's a very tall bookshelf, but it holds more than just books. So just keep that in your mind for a little bit. Now, if you guys have used like any form of social media whatsoever, I think most of you guys would have seen headlines like this, or this, and this. And if you guys are familiar with like academically high achievers, or I mean, looking at you guys, I'm pretty sure that you're either one yourself right now or used to be one. Then you guys would probably be familiar with the concept of academic merit being something to be praised, and it's a point of contention in every sort of family reunion. It's to be praised, it's to be looked after, it's sought after. So going back to my bedroom and the bookshelf, what it holds is not just books, but rather 12 years of competitive academia. It's trophies and medals and all sorts of merits, and large glass plaque commemorating my summer internships. Imagine, if you will, being in my position, laying in bed every night, and the first thing you see when you wake every morning, and the last thing you see before you close your eyes, is always those rows and rows of shiny medals. What would you feel then? Would you feel a sense of elation, this little twinge of satisfaction when you relive, just for that one moment, that rush of adrenaline when you finally reached a goal that you have wanted to for so long? Does it make you feel as though you can take on your day with all the encouragements that you need? Perhaps that was what my parents intended to happen when they placed that bookshelf right in my line of view. But the thing is, their plans did not work, because I ended up noticing them about as much as I noticed my wallpaper or that pile of Marie Kondo books that I ironically will never clean up. And this isn't to say that I don't place any merits or any value upon them, nor is it to say that I am completely above the social compulsion to enter such competitions that earned me them in the first place. What I'm saying is that as somebody who grew up in an environment where academia is sought after as like the most prioritized thing, I'm no stranger to comparison, especially social comparison. Peer pressure, to me, is a very, very old friend of me. Do I still feel its weight up until today? Of course I do. It's like impossible not to, because all these people are not only my friends that I hang out with on a daily basis, they're here right now watching me. And that in of itself is pressure enough. And yet, as I grew older, the pain sort of just waned away, because I recognized that there were so many different things, so many factors that contributed to the divergence between their life and mine. I realized that it didn't really make sense for me to tie my self-worth to theirs. But it's one thing to unlink the quality of your life from others successfully. And it's another thing entirely to outrun the ghost of someone seemingly far more successful and far more confident than I was. And that is my past self. Now, this might seem very strange, right? But bear with me here. As with all other psychological phenomena, competition with the past self, or something that Sachem Garel, a PhD researcher at the University of Amsterdam, has termed as downward temporal comparison, it's not always a bad thing. Because in her thesis, Better Than My Past Self, Sachem actually found out that it could be a very good alternative to social comparison, because it does not feed into narcissism. And also, it could be a means in which interventions can contribute to a healthier self-image in children and adults as well. If done right, then, this sort of comparison could actually be a very good exercise in self-reflection, but it also gives us an internal reserve of encouragement for ourselves without having to resort to competition with those around us. But of course, if there's a right way to do things, then there's also a wrong way to go about doing things. And as I want to do, that is what I found myself on, doing things the very, very wrong way. You see, I don't notice those past achievements on most nights. And say most because I sometimes do recognize them. And when I do, it's always because my current self has somehow failed. Now, this doesn't have to be anything catastrophic. It could be anything from failure to gain a high prize to something as small as getting an error on an essay or a math problem that should have been completely avoidable. But regardless of how it portrayed itself, the effects were always the same. I would find myself looking towards that bookshelf on the uppermost row with all those medals, all those trophies, and wonder, was it really me who did all those great things? Was it really me who had the drive, had the passion, had the will to pour into such a task until I gained something worthy? It seemed almost impossible, outlandish even, in that moment. I felt as though I was a film extra, dropped into a film set, where the character shared my name and my face and my memories, but not my abilities. The insidious thing with self-pressure, and one of the first symptoms I actually recognized about it, is that unlike social pressure, self-pressure is a direct comment on the detriment of my abilities. With peer pressure, there's a little bit of leeway there, it's a bit of wiggle room. You can think about it as in, well, maybe they're different from me. They're built different. They're con nhà người ta, right? So we don't have to feel bad when they gain something. But here, there's no such luxury. Here, every single mistake is on my part and my part alone. There's nowhere to run, no rationalization to be made. Only a dark downward spiral of constantly feeling like I was falling short of my potential. And spiral I did because I was so obsessed with that dichotomy, the difference between me and my past self. And this is where the second symptom raises its head, the redefining of what success means to me. You might think this is a good thing, but really it isn't. Because now, aside from requiring an abstract, tangible accomplishment, it also required, at minimum, the same amount of efficiency that I had once poured into a certain task before. For example, it wasn't enough to just solve a math problem. I got to wonder why it took me so damn long when I could have done it so much quicker before. And it's even worse when it comes to repeat competitions. And I feel like this is something a lot of my friends who are in national teams, especially those people who have done it twice or 3 times in a row, when you're constantly repeating all these exercises and constantly chasing the same exact goal and the same exact obstacle course, is there really any excuse if, this is your 3rd year, this is your 60th reading test? Do you have any excuse for being slower than you did your first time around? My younger self didn't find any answer to that other than no. And gradually, this entanglement with the past began to influence my future as well. I was afraid to enter new things, afraid to embark on new journeys, new endeavors, because I feared not only failure, I feared their success. I feared failure, obviously, because if I failed, it was the veritable proof that I was falling. But if I succeeded, it was only a perpetuation of the constant uphill slog that I had trapped myself in. With every step backwards, with every single skill that I lost, with every new thing that I've done, I felt as though I was falling apart. I felt like I was betraying someone, and it was a betrayal of the worst degree, because I was letting down myself, the one person that I thought I was and knew. Now, this took me a very long time to snap out. I think even to this day, there are still times when I question myself and my abilities. But I'm here today to tell you all my story, not to encourage you guys to do anything. This is not a guide. This is not like a self-help manual. Some of you here might think what I'm saying here is incredibly obvious. Some of you might never have felt this, and I hope with a little bit of luck that you guys will never have to go through it. But for those of you who have went through it before, or are going through it right now, what I have here is meant to be a story, to tell you that at the very least in some aspect, I understand what you're going through. And I'm here to share how I found my footing and refound myself amidst all this. Imagine first that you're beginning a task, and before you even do anything, you're already faced with this constant looming pressure of having to do better than you did before. And you think, well, why did it take me so long to do a certain task when I have done it so much faster? And the thing is, your memories lie. Think about all the things that you've done in your life right now. Skills that are so everyday and so simple. Reading, listening to people, comprehension, chewing on food. Skills and tasks that are just so simple and commonplace that you always forget that once upon a time when you was just a wee child, you had to put so much effort into mastering them. And this is, I found, is also true when it comes to academia. Just because you don't remember trying doesn't mean your past self isn't putting in just as much work as you are right now. Another thing that I've understood is that unlike your video game character, like a Genshin character you made C6 or something, your skills will always deteriorate. They can and they will deteriorate over time. And it sounds very obvious, but this is actually something that has taken me so long to accept that it's a natural thing and it's not anything bad. Because gain and loss of skill is something of an indicator of your maturity. Your skill set always changes to best suit the environment that you're in. And as your environment changes, you go from high school to college to the workplace, your skill set will change. And just because you've done a certain task within a set amount of time, within a set amount of effort, at some point in your life, that does not mean that you're obligated to always have to replicate that at any point in time. And I've found out that it's easier for me, much simpler, for me to face each new obstacle as they were, without linking them to past results. I don't think, well, if I accomplished this, I should have been able to do that with no issue, or I should have been better. No, I found that it is the best way if you could enjoy the process of conquering them, each new obstacle, by itself, and not burdened by the shackles of the past. And there was this time when I was at my lowest, and I was desperately looking for someone, anyone, to guide me. And so my Instagram feed was completely flooded with wellness blogs and life gurus, because I truly believed that they knew what they were doing. And while I've stopped doing so, because some of it I felt like it wasn't the best thing for me, I still remember their really, really bright, inspirational quote posts. You know, the one, the curly fonts, gradient background, hashtag live, laugh, love. One of those really stuck with me because it said something along the lines of, it's okay and enough to be better than the you of yesterday. And I think it's extremely cliche, and I feel like a lot of my friends cringe just hearing me say that. But the thing is, it's actually sound advice, given that you actually know what being better includes. On one hand, there will always be times when you're studying and you suddenly feel, oh, I'm stagnating. Suddenly the concepts get harder to grasp. You spend more time doing exercises. And suddenly there are more and more errors popping up where there shouldn't be. And you think, oh no, I'm failing, I'm falling. But fear not, because what you're experiencing, it could actually be what's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. And Dunning-Kruger effect is a theory that posits that as you begin to learn more and more about new things, you leave the peak of Mount Stupid, and that's where you feel the most confident. And you slowly go towards despair, because you suddenly realize just how much you don't know about what you're doing. And not only that, your eyes will get keener, your standards will get raised. And because of that, you become more conscious and more aware of your errors than ever before. And it's a very disheartening thing. But I encourage all of you to embrace it, because it is not only a sign of your maturity, but it is also the hallmark of your escape into enlightenment. And this brings me to my last and final point, that growth and being better is not always quantitative. It's not an easy sign. It's not on a forever going up. It's not quantifiable in the sense that you can count it with how many medals that you have, how many trophies that you have. But rather, there are certain ways and certain moments of improvement that is completely invisible to you until you need them in the future. From learning a small factoid about a subject you didn't know you liked, to gaining this great competition or some great merit that you wanted. Change and the betterment of the self can be as invisible as it is life-defining and life-changing. So with that, I leave you all with one final word. Is that I implore you to romanticize the mundane if you must. Because sometimes simply waking up to face a new day is its own form of success. All of you might sometimes think that you're dull crystals, but in the right light, all of you will shine. Thank you.